Hi everyone, my name is Laura and today we're talking about something a little bit different. Healthy coping mechanisms. This is something that is super important and that I am really passionate about, so grab yourself a cup of tea, cup of coffee, water, whatever beverage you need and let's sit down and chat. Coping mechanisms are what we turn to when we've tried the healthy habits and all the things that we can do preemptively in advance, but now we're at a place where things aren't going well and we need to find out how to get through our days. I really wish we could talk more about coping mechanisms because I know that there are 100,000 videos out there on YouTube about healthy habits, which is awesome and it's great to look after yourself in advance, but nothing's perfect. We're not perfect. We all have things that come up or times where things just are difficult, and I think that we would all benefit from being able to talk more about how you actually deal with things when you are struggling, because we can't just solve everything overnight. In the meantime, when you're struggling and you're working through things and pushing through the day-to-day, you will be using coping mechanisms. We all do this. We all have coping mechanisms, whether they are conscious or subconscious. And something I've tried really hard to do in the last few years is notice when I'm struggling and what I'm gravitating towards in that moment, and trying to make sure that what I'm doing is a healthy coping mechanism. Being more conscious of your coping mechanisms wherever possible, trying to choose the healthier coping mechanisms that are available to you is going to be much better than just blindly pushing ahead. My first caveat is that I am not a mental health professional. But what I will say is that I kind of got my thoughts together on this, and I then went and looked at the research, at the literature on healthy coping mechanisms versus unhealthy coping mechanisms. So what I'm saying today, it lines up with what the research says. I'm not just quoting research verbatim, this is my experience, but I've tried to make sure that whatever I'm saying is in line with what the research says as well. And so I will also link in the description kind of where I checked in on my thoughts before presenting them to you guys today, and that could be a really helpful resource as well. So my first coping mechanism, and this is for me the way to go when I'm struggling, is to take your space. Take some space. When we're in the thick of things and we are busy with our day-to-day and things start to not feel so good and we're struggling, the best way to not spiral and to end up in an even worse place is to just take some space. This is even more important on those times, let's say, where it's a big holiday and you're with family, or there's a big thing going on at work. When you're in those busy, stressful environments and things get tough, take some space. That is my first healthy coping mechanism. Number 2 is to get a hug, either from a partner or a friend or a dog or yourself, or with a pillow. But this action of getting a hug, this releases hormones that help to relax you and help you to de-stress. And I really realized this a couple of years ago when my at the time partner was overseas for 6 months, and it was also during COVID lockdowns, so I then wasn't getting hugs from anyone. We didn't have our dog then, and I could literally feel all of the hugs that I'd kind of stored up just draining away, and it was a really hard time for me just not being able to get those. So when you feel yourself struggling, get a hug from someone or something. Number 3, this is possibly my favorite. Use a safe activities list. That probably doesn't make sense off the bat, but hear me out. if I'm struggling and I think, okay, I went to the gym Monday, it's now Wednesday, I'm trying to kind of get to the gym or do some exercise a couple of times a week, but the dog needs to go out. Maybe I should go for a run with the dog. If I'm struggling, that is a no-go activity for me, because I can put a lot of pressure on myself when I'm running, and if I'm already struggling and I'm also trying to run and manage the dog at the same time, I'm setting myself up for failure. That is not a safe activity for me. So a safe activity would be to say, I will take the dog for a walk, which will help to keep me calm rather than introducing maybe some of those stress hormones that you can get from running. And then I will just do some weighted activities at home, and I can also tend to anything else that I have so that I feel more on top of life. Those are safe activities for me. And it's also really helpful sometimes when I'm feeling really down, I feel like I don't want to do basically anything. And that can also then leave me feeling worse because I'm just staying at home. I'm not doing anything. I'm not getting the benefit from doing anything enjoyable. Knowing that I have those safe activities that I know this may not make me feel loads better, but it is not going to make me feel worse, almost certainly. I can pick one of those things and go, great, I am going to go do that. So for me, like I said, there's certain exercises that are not good for my safe activities list, but this can be for anything, whether there's like certain things with your partner, certain topics that you don't want to discuss when you're having a tough time. Maybe there's certain foods that you want to avoid doing, or certain other activities that are just not safe for you in that moment. Whew. Number 4, this is one we hear all the time, deep breathing. Yes. So honestly, I always used to think that this was really silly, and I think it's maybe because I wasn't being heard in the moment when I was struggling. And let's be honest, that's really important. If you're actually struggling with someone and they're telling you just take a deep breath, that's not going to help. But if you are on your own and you're struggling with things, taking a deep breath is a really, really good idea, because it gets that parasympathetic, like rest and digest system activated and going, and that helps your body to feel more safe. And it's also just a really good time for, if things are starting to spiral, taking those deep breaths just gives you a bit of a pause to think and figure out how you're going to move forward with things. Okay, number 5 is to remove unnecessary pressures. There are a lot of pressures that we get handed in day-to-day life, and we have a choice as to whether we choose to put that on our plate or not. The analogy is that whatever on our plate, that's what we're dealing with, that's what we're managing, that's what we're putting energy into. People hand us stuff or throw things at us sometimes, and we have a choice whether we're going to put that on our plate or not, right? And sometimes you may find when you're struggling that your plate gets smaller. This is definitely true for me, and I think it's probably true for a lot of us, where perhaps before it was actually a manageable amount that was on your plate, but now that you are struggling and you're just more tired, you're more stressed, it takes more energy just to get through day-to-day things, you may need to take some things off your plate for that moment. And these may be like big expectations, like let's say you've signed up for a new activity and you have to say, actually, I'm gonna need to stop that thing for a few months and then I'll come back to you guys. Or it could literally be just going, oh, I wanted to vacuum today and that is just gonna be too many activities for me today. Let me just not vacuum, it'll be fine, I'll do it tomorrow. So it can be big things, it can be small things, but when you do have those essentials of, like, for me, let's say right now, I need to walk the dog and I need to make dinner and I need to pack up my work things that are still out, ready for tomorrow. Oh, and I need to do some form of exercise today because it's been 2 days. That's it. Those are my things for this evening that I know I really have to do. everything else is kind of auxiliary to that, right? So like I want to put some laundry away, and I do want to vacuum, and I want to carry on decluttering, which I was doing earlier, and I might want to clear some stuff out of the fridge. But all of those are non-essential, and if I'm feeling overwhelmed and overloaded and tired, I will remove those pressures from myself. And also, if people contact me tonight and I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'm gonna remove that pressure from myself, and I will reply when I am good and ready. So those are my 5 kind of categories of healthy coping mechanisms. If you do look at the resource that I list, they kind of talk about some of those. They just kind of phrase it in different ways, but this is how it makes sense for me. But whatever is like a healthy coping mechanism for you, just knowing what those are so you can at least attempt to pull on those and draw on those when you're having a tough time is just so much better than, let's be honest, allowing yourself to just fall into the unhealthy coping mechanisms. And like, it's always gonna happen a little bit. I was super anxious the other day waiting for news on something, and just had a little chocolate to just feel a bit better, right? Like, that is something that isn't a super healthy coping mechanism, but it happens occasionally. But if most of the time we can look at these healthy coping mechanisms rather than the unhealthy ones of like spiraling and binging on either food or shows or whatever, or just cutting ourselves off, or just ignoring our problems and trying to cover it up with super fun activities constantly and never actually taking time for ourselves. If we can try to avoid those panic, unhealthy coping mechanisms and come back to what makes sense for us, it's just going to be so much better for you in the long run. So anyway, I hope that this has helped you guys today. Please comment down below if you have any thoughts on this, and take care out there. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.